All right, let's get right into it. For over 4 centuries now, the story of the lost colony of Roanoke has basically been America's favorite ghost story. You probably know the basics, right? Back in 1587, 115 English settlers, men, women, kids, landed on an island off the coast of what is now North Carolina. They were there to establish England's very first permanent settlement in the New World. But just a few years later, poof, they completely vanished, left behind a 400-year cold case. Well, today, we are putting on our detective hats because thanks to modern science and some pretty incredible recent discoveries, this historical mystery has actually finally been solved.
So to really grasp the solution here, we gotta start with the disappearance itself. I want you to picture this. Put yourself in the shoes of Governor John White. It's August 1590. You left your colony, your own daughter, and your newborn granddaughter, Virginia Dare, 3 whole years ago just to get supplies from England. You ended up getting delayed by a literal war with the Spanish Armada, and now finally you're returning. But as you step onto Roanoke Island, you're just hit with a massive question mark. The settlement is completely abandoned. The houses, they're meticulously taken apart, not destroyed, taken apart. There are no bodies, no graves, and absolutely zero signs of a struggle.
And there's really only one clue left behind, a single word carved right into a wooden post, Croatoan. Now, what's super interesting about this clue isn't just the word itself, but what's actually missing. You see, before White left, the colonists agreed on a code. If they were ever forced to flee under duress, they'd carve a Maltese cross as a distress signal. Well, there was no cross. That deliberately left message strongly suggested they relocated completely voluntarily to Croatoan, which was the name of an allied indigenous group and a nearby island we now call Hatteras Island. Now, for centuries, historians have just speculated wildly about this. They blamed massive hurricanes, starvation during a crazy drought, or even secret massacres by Spanish forces. But we can actually systematically debunk all those old myths now. How? Well, Governor White noted the buildings were carefully dismantled, right? They weren't blown away by a storm, there were no mass graves pointing to a famine, and no burned ruins that would suggest an attack. Instead, a totally new reality emerges here. It's not a ghost story, it's a story of calculated relocation, assimilation with native communities, and honestly, ultimate survival.
So, how did we finally crack this case? The first massive breakthrough didn't even happen in a trench. It happened in a museum. Back in 2012, researchers at the British Museum were looking at this incredible 425-year-old map drawn by John White himself. It's called La Virginia Pars. Using these advanced, non-destructive imaging techniques, they peered straight through 2 tiny physical paper patches that White had glued onto the original map. Now, artists back then used patches all the time to correct mistakes, but what they found underneath this one, it definitely wasn't a mistake. It was a closely guarded secret. Right underneath one of those tiny patches was a hidden symbol for a Renaissance-style fort, and it was positioned roughly 50 miles inland, right at the head of the Albemarle Sound. This wasn't just some random doodle either. This concealed symbol perfectly matched White's own written records. He actually wrote down that the colonists had prepared to move 50 miles, quote, into the Main before he even left for England. He most likely covered it up on the map just to keep the location hidden from Spanish spies.
Section 1. The Split Colony Theory. Okay, this theory completely changes the game. The crucial takeaway here is that the 115 colonists didn't just pack up and move as one giant, vulnerable group. No, they were smart. They strategically fragmented. Group 1 moved inland to those exact locations marked on White's map, areas archaeologists now call Site X and Site Y. Meanwhile, Group 2 moved south to Hatteras Island, exactly like that Croatoan carving said. And honestly, splitting up made perfect sense for survival. They were in the middle of a severe drought during the Little Ice Age. Smaller factions are way easier to feed, they're much more mobile, and it is far easier for a small group to peacefully integrate with allied Native American communities than a massive crowd. So, armed with this centuries-old secret from the map, modern archaeologists from the First Colony Foundation got their boots muddy. They went out to conduct physical field work at those inland sites in Verde County. And you know what? Through ground-penetrating radar and some meticulous digging, they actually started unearthing hard evidence of domestic English habitation, right exactly where John White's hidden fort symbol said it would be. Now, here is where it gets absolutely fascinating. Sometimes the biggest clue is what you don't find. Yes, they found English artifacts, but they found absolutely zero clay tobacco pipes. So why does a missing pipe matter? Well, by the time the Jamestown colony was established a bit later in 1607, pipe smoking had exploded. It was everywhere. Clay pipes literally littered those later sites. So the complete, utter absence of these pipes at Site X and Site Y proves, without a doubt, that these inland camps firmly belong to the 1580s Roanoke period, way before that Jamestown pipe culture took hold. But they did pull some amazing things out of the dirt. Excavators recovered very specific Elizabethan ceramics. We're talking Surrey, Hampshire birderware, North Devon baluster jars, and German stoneware. These are food and drink vessels used for real food preparation and storage. This tells us this wasn't just some brief temporary trading post where guys were swapping goods. This means an extended English family or community was physically living there, cooking and surviving deep inland. Okay, so that's the inland group. What about the other half of the slit colony, down south on Hatteras Island? Well, down there, archaeologists found something called hammer scale. Basically, it's this microscopic byproduct of blacksmithing. To operate a forge, you need an anvil, you need furnaces, bellows, the whole shebang. That specific kind of ironworking technology was definitively non-Indigenous for that region at the time. So finding it there proves a sustained European presence on the island, living right alongside the Croatoan people.
And then they found the smoking gun. Literally. On Hatteras Island, they dug up a European lead and iron musket ball dating straight to the Elizabethan era, embedded directly into the jawbone of a deer. And right alongside it, deer bones showing traditional Indigenous bow and arrow fractures. Think about what that means. It paints this incredibly vivid picture for us. European colonists and Native Americans were living together, braving the harsh winters of the Little Ice Age, and using both Indigenous and European hunting tools side by side to feed their shared community.
Part 2. Genetics and the Lumbee. Let's trace this timeline really quick, because it's wild. The colony vanishes in 1587, right? Fast forward to the 1730s. European explorers are pushing into the Carolina swamps, and they are stunned. They encounter Indigenous families with English surnames, gray eyes, and get this, they're speaking an archaic Elizabethan dialect of English. For generations, the Lumbee people of North Carolina have held this strong oral tradition that they actually descended from the Roanoke colonists who fled inland and intermarried with their tribes. And for centuries, history books just shrugged and dismissed this as a myth. That is, until the 2000s, when modern genetic testing finally caught up to the legend. When they did DNA testing on Lumbee families, it revealed a living genetic palimpsest, basically layers of history written right into their biological code. It showed the British R1b paternal lineage, which maps perfectly to 16th-century European men, combined with Native American A and C maternal lineages from the Carolina coast, along with later African admixture. The math and the myth, they converged perfectly. The DNA straight up proved that European men from the late 1500s integrated with coastal Native American tribes. But you know how it is. The scientific community always demands hard proof, a body. And in 2025, they finally got one. Near Site X, further inland, excavators found a skeleton in a traditional Christian-style burial dating to the late 1590s. The DNA extracted from her teeth proved she was of late 16th century English descent. But here is the absolute kicker. She was female. Why does that matter? Because the initial 1585 military expedition to this area was exclusively male. The presence of a European woman living, dying, and being buried inland in the late 1590s is the ultimate undeniable proof that the 1587 Roanoke colonists relocated and survived there. Part 3. Transformed, not lost. There's this incredibly powerful quote from one of the researchers that I think really hits the nail on the head. Bones don't lie, but history books do. Think about it. For 400 years, we framed Roanoke as this dark tragedy of people who just completely vanished into thin air. But physical science, the ground-penetrating radar, the isotopic analysis, the DNA sequencing, it has completely overwritten those ghost stories. They weren't massacred, and they definitely didn't magically disappear. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought today. What does it truly mean to be lost in history? Because as we've seen, successful survival in early America didn't mean stubbornly clinging to an isolated English identity. It meant adapting. It meant sharing knowledge and blending cultures. The colonists of Roanoke didn't disappear into a mystery. They disappeared into America itself. They became part of a complex, resilient, genetic, and cultural legacy that is literally still alive today. Thanks so much for exploring this amazing 400-year cold case with me. Keep asking questions, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.